I feel like ever since we've gotten Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus, I just feel like Dynamax Pokemon are pretty useless, and I kind of want to have that discussion today. I want to hear from you guys to hear, am I the only one who feels this way, or do you feel like ever since Eternatus came out, it's kind of like, why are we even getting these? Now, a lot of this is stemming from the fact that we just had the Dynamax Eevee weekend, and next weekend we're going to be seeing the Dynamax Lugia event. And to give you a little bit more context, Cream and I ended up doing a couple tests with Dynamax Eevee this weekend. We wanted to see what would happen if we use the optimal counters versus the strong ones that we're getting now, like Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus, because I wanted to see, is that really good enough to use? I think you get a lot of criticism, especially streaming this game. People are like, why aren't you using an optimal counter? Well, because I have Eternatus, and it's so strong, why not, right? I have Zamazenta, who cares? So the first test that we did was Cream has a Hundo Gmax Machamp. We ended up using that. It did well, obviously. It's an optimal counter. It does crazy damage. So, okay, cool. We know that works well. And Cream has that, but I don't have one of those powered up because I don't have a Hundo, and I'm not going to invest in a Gmax or Dmax unless I have a Hundo. So then what we ended up doing was we used Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus. Now, I'm not going to walk through all the videos. I'm going to try to put these videos up somewhere. I don't know if I'll make them small around here. We'll see. As I'm talking, you will see them. So what we ended up doing was I first started with Zacian. Now my Zacian knows, BBL, obviously, the steel move. So I used that. I used BBL and I just crushed it. I think it ended up taking 2 total maxes. And in that second max, I threw 2 of my charged attacks and I took it down by then, right? So I think let's kind of talk about that way. So Zacian, BBL did really well. Not counter, not an optimal counter. It crushed it, right? Then with Zamazenta, I have a Zamazenta that knows a punching move, as I call it, and then the one that also knows the steel move, right? So I did the punching move for my attacks before I max out, right? Those did really well. I maxed, obviously I threw my Behemoth Bash, and I think I did the same amount of damage with Zacian, where I think I maxed twice, and on that second charge attack, I ended up taking it down, right? So 2 and then 2. Then for Zamazenta, I decided to, instead of throwing my punching move, I threw my Behemoth Bash, my steel move, as I was like, before it was actually Dynamax. This one did the best out of all of them, which I find really interesting. So I threw my steel moves, I maxed twice, but I took out Eevee on the first charge attack that I threw of the second max. Then I tried this out on Eternatus as well. I ended up using Dynamax Cannon, throwing my moves before it was Dynamax. And again, I think it was about 2 max moves. And on that second charge move, I was able to take it out. So looking at this, we use an optimal counter. We used 3 not so optimal counters. And Zamazenta ended up working out the best out of all of them, which I was really surprised. I thought Zacian, since it has a higher attack, would do better. I think one thing about Zamazenta is that it comes in with that pre-built shield. So I just feel like it's better just in that sense. But it made me think, why would I use an optimal Pokemon if I have Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus at this point? I feel like since we have those, I don't really need anything else. We even really thought this when Eternatus was announced. I felt like it came out so soon. We just got the max mechanic and you're gonna give us like the final max Pokemon before we have everything else. I just feel like the timing of this was weird. I don't know if it's because there's like a lack of interest in max Pokemon, or they know that like people are just going to use Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus, and that's how they want to play, which is totally fine. You don't need the optimal counters anymore at this point, it kind of seems like. But it does seem like Eternatus came out so prematurely that now at this point, you just use Eternatus, you'll take it down, and you don't really need anything else. So why are we even doing these max battles if we have the strong Pokemon? Isn't that the point, is to get stronger Pokemon to take things down? But if we have the strong Pokemon, then why do we need things like Eevee or Lugia? So I kind of want to talk about this now. I think there's some pros and cons as to why we need Eevee and Lugia. For example, I feel like those are 2 really good examples because Eevee, it's the year of Eevee, so I get it. And we have Eevee Calm Day, the Calm Day in December that we're getting, where we're going to have Eevee again, and it's going to be easier to evolve it. So getting the Dynamax Eevee, getting all the evolutions, if you're a completionist, you're going to be able to evolve it easier. Makes a lot of sense. Like, I get that. I would plan it this way as well if I were in charge of the company. So you have like your Dex entry and your collectionist, where it's like, I want every Dynamax Pokemon that's going to come out, and I don't care what you say. I want to get it. I want to get the shiny. I want to get all the evolutions, whatever, that's fine. So you have that completionist side of the picture. And for Pokemon like Lugia, a lot of people need Lugia. So if you're working on level 80, you still need the Johto Platinum Badge. This is going to help you get there. So this is going to help people with Platinum Badges as well. So not a problem either. And when it comes to the Dynamax Pokemon, being some of them are legendary, it's a great way to farm candy. I need a little bit more candy for like my Moltres, for example, and I've been dropping it off whenever we do an Eevee, and I've been getting like my 5 candy so easily. I recall it, I put it back in, and I just keep getting candy. And this is a great way. We've never been able to get candy this easily for a legendary, right? You have to walk 20 kilometers with it as your buddy. You can't put it in a gym, so you can't, on the off chance when you're feeding it a berry, get some candy for that, which you can do if you didn't know that for like other Pokemon. So it's a great way to get candy for some legendaries. Obviously, though, we can't drop off Zacian, Zamazenta, or Eternatus, so we can't get candy for those. But if you need the Lugia candy, you can drop off Lugia. If you need Eevee candy, you can drop off Eevees. But also knowing that it seems like every single Pokemon is going to have a Dynamax version though, I would definitely say hold off on investing your resources in a non-Dynamax Pokemon at this point, especially if you haven't powered it up. Now, if you've powered one up, that's when this becomes like what you get 2 of everything. That seems a little bit too much in my opinion, depending on where you are as a player. So let me give you kind of an example of what I'm thinking about. So Moltres has been out many times, right? I've done the Shadow Moltres, regular Moltres. I've never gotten a Hundo. For some reason, I've just like never powered one up. And I ended up getting a Hundo Dynamax Moltres. Well, I had the candy and resources, so I powered that up, obviously. That would be really silly of me not to. It's Dynamax, it's a Hundo, I can use it in raids and in max battle. So it's kind of like 2-in-1, right? That's the way I see Dynamax Pokemon now, as if you haven't put resources into it, it's a 2-in-1 Pokemon. You can use it in raids and max battles. But let's say, for example, Raikou. Raikou is one of my absolute favorite Pokemon. I have 2 level 50 Shadows. There is no way I'm going to level 50 a Dynamax Raikou for a couple of reasons. I don't have the resources. I've already put it into 2 Shadows. If you know how much Stardust and Candy that is, it's incredible. But for me, I would rather put my resources into a Shadow Pokemon at that point because I love Shadow Pokemon. They're really strong. So if I have a good Shadow, I'd rather put it into a Shadow. But I guess if I didn't, and I ended up getting a Hundo Raikou, I guess I would put it into the Raikou, like the Dynamax Raikou. Now, if I have a regular, it's non-Shadow, non-Dynamax, at this point in the game, I wouldn't put my resources into that Pokemon. So it's just a way to think about the Dynamax Pokemon a little bit rather than just being like, oh my gosh, I need to get this. Think about like what your collection looks like, what Pokemon you are powering up, what you have powered up, and just kind of think like, oh, if I've never done this, then of course the Dynamax makes sense. I'm not trying to say Dynamax Pokemon are bad, they're trash. What's the point now that we have Zacian, Zamazenta, Eternatus, even though that is kind of what I was saying at the beginning. That's not really what I'm trying to say. I think it is more of like, why try to get a Hundo if you don't really need it, right? I think it's really easy to be like, I'm gonna do 50 raids for this and try to get the Hundo, but it's like, but you already have a Hundo of this Pokemon. Why are you trying to get another one? I feel like it's more for people who don't have the Hundo, and it's like, oh, this is a really nice pro that you can now Dynamax. You can like max battle with it and raid with it. But I don't know, I'd like to kind of hear like what you guys think about that because it is a little bit nuanced and I feel like there are gonna be different opinions about this. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the cons because I do think Dynamax Pokemon just have a little bit more cons than anything else, right? We know that we have Gigantamax Pokemon. I think Gigantamax 100% are worth it. They are unique. You should go after them. Gmax Eevee, I'm going to be max battling that a ton. Dynamax Eevee, I did a few here and there. I'm not going to go crazy on it just personally. But I feel like a lot of the Dynamax Pokemon just aren't useful. And what I mean by that is I'm not an Eevee hater. I actually love Eevee. I love the evolutions. I try to use my evolutions in raids whenever I can, but I feel like out of all the evolutions, I don't know how many people are going to evolve their Dynamax Eevee and use them in max battles when we have something like Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus. I don't know. Like I said, is that wrong of me to say? I'm not really sure. I just feel like I don't know how many people are really going to be using their Eevees. If you are using your Eevees, let me know. Not just as Eevees. I'm talking about evolving them and powering them up. I don't want to see Eevees in max battles, right? Like that's like the Grookey, right? I don't want to see Grookey, Wooloo, Eevee. I don't want to see those in my max battles. If you're going to be using it, at least evolve it, power it up, be useful. I just don't really feel like that people are going to put those resources in to actually put in an Eevee. Now they might, right? I think I saw online like Glaceon is the top ice max Pokemon, even after Lapras. And I'm like, that's kind of crazy, but I'm still going to use Lapras because it's kind of cool. So I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts about that. But I just feel like they're not that useful. It's kind of like, I don't know, well, we had Ammonite. I don't know who's using Ammonite. I just feel like who's using these and like what is the point of raiding these or battling these, putting in your resources. Like I said, when we have Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus, these non-optimal counters are crushing these max battles. So why even use something that's optimal? I guess. I don't know. Like I said, that's a huge discussion in the community. Should we all be using optimal Pokemon? Or if we have things like Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus, just go ahead and use those. And on the topic of using optimal counters and not, I think one of the reasons why I say this though is because these are now remotable. When max battles and Gmax battles were not remotable, you had to go in with powered up max moves, top counters, because if not, you couldn't take these down. When we lived in Tulsa, we had like 20 people show up for the very first max battle, and a lot of us powered up like the worst Blastoise ever, right? We powered up like the worst ones of what we had, and we still couldn't take it down. Now that we can remote and we can have 100 people in these lobbies, Zamazentas are going to be good, right? Zacians are going to be good enough. Eternatus is going to be good enough if you can get 100 people in, right? Because if you have like less than 20 at this point, people will ditch. I have seen so many max battles fail because people just ditch if there's not like 50 or more now, right? So it's also like this remote culture has really changed. Like, do you even need optimal counters, right? So I think that's why I say, do you need optimal counters anymore? Probably not, because it is remotable, right? But back not even a year ago, when these weren't remotable, yeah, you needed optimal counters, right? But now that you don't, you don't. And that also goes into that these are really expensive Pokemon to like put your resources in. They take a lot of candy, and leveling up the max moves take a ton of particles. They take a ton of XL candy. It's just really resource intensive. And if you're not like working on the level, I think it's like level 73 where you need to do like 20 max moves. I don't know how many more Pokemon I'm going to be like leveling up their max moves unless I get like a hundo of something, just because of how resource intensive it is, right? When it first started, like I said, we put in a ton of resources into like a random Blastoise, Venusaur, and Charizard when those were the ones that we had. And I used all my resources. I cannot believe to say this, I didn't have enough like Charmander candy when I ended up getting a hundo like Gmax of Charizard. I didn't have enough candy to put resources because I wasted it on like a 2-star Gmax Charizard when these came out. And like I've played for a while. We played the calm days of Charmander. I can't believe I don't have candy for that, right? I think that's what's kind of crazy too, is like they're so resource intensive. And a lot of us, I felt like, got burned at the beginning when we had to put in all of our resources and candy. And now it's like, I don't even have candy for this Pokemon anymore. And this should be like the easiest. It's a starter. Who doesn't have Charmander candy? So I think it's a little bit of that too, where I felt like we put in so many resources. It's like, I'm not putting in resources unless it's hundo and really a Gigantamax at this point. And I mentioned this kind of as a pro, that if you haven't already invested in a Pokemon of this type, you should go ahead and do the Dynamax version. But if you have, I really wouldn't put resources. Like Eevee, if I get a hundo Eevee Dynamax, I need one more for the Eeveelution family, for like the hundo family. So that would be cool. But if I already had all the hundos and I ended up getting a hundo, maybe I'd put resources into it. It is kind of cool, but like I said, when it comes to like a legendary Pokemon, I don't have that much candy to like max out all of these legendaries. So I feel like I have to be like picky and choosy with that. If you've been playing for a really long time, I feel like that's where you kind of have to be like a little bit more strategic in like what you're powering up when it comes to like Dynamax Pokemon, because it's way too easy to just power up whatever. I think we need to have a little bit more standards. So like for us, our standard is if we don't have a hundo, we are not investing in it. And that's just like what it is. Like everyone's like, oh, use Blissey, it's the best tank. Like Zamazenta is good enough. It already has a shield. I have that powered up. I don't have a good Blissey. I'm not just going to drop all my Blissey candy into like a mediocre Chansey just because that's optimal. Like I said, Zamazenta does just good enough. So I'm just going to use Zamazenta. But these are kind of like all of my thoughts that I've had since Eevee has come out this weekend, especially like I said, since we did these tests. I think it's the tests that really made me start questioning a little bit, like, what am I going to do every time a Dynamax Pokemon's coming out? Like, I think we're going to get Dynamax of every single Pokemon. Like, I'm sure we'll get Dynamax Mewtwo sometime, right? But it's like, I don't even know at this point. I feel like that's crazy, right? We're going to probably have Mega Mewtwo out for Kalos Tour, and then like a couple years later, we're going to be getting Dynamax Mewtwo. Like, that's just way too much. I think that becomes where this game can be a little bit like FOMO, where like you feel like you have to get these Pokemon, but it's like you don't have to get everything. You can always just get the dex and you don't have to power everything up. But it's also like be mindful about like your spending, because I think it's really easy to spend a lot, especially with the max Pokemon. I think they're some of the most expensive Pokemon in the game. And I don't know how valuable they are. Like I said, now that we have Zacian, Zamazenta, and Eternatus, I just think since we've gotten those 3 Pokemon that aren't even max Pokemon, they're regular Pokemon that can enter into max battles. I just feel like since we have these, it's just a means of a way for us like to just get the battle done, but it doesn't mean we have to like invest in every single Dynamax Pokemon that comes out. I kind of feel at this point though that I've kind of rambled enough, but I really like to hear everyone's thoughts about this. Like, what do you think about potentially every Pokemon being a Dynamax Pokemon? How are you handling powering those up or investing in them? How do you feel now that we have Eternatus specifically, that like we got like the biggest, grandest of the max Pokemon? Like, what do we do after this? Like, why did they put that out so early? I just feel like the timing wasn't right and it makes it seem a little lackluster. So I have a lot of questions. I'd love to hear from everyone, like what you guys think about all of this. Because I just think the max Pokemon are some of those things that I don't really know how to handle, and I don't really know how hard I should be going. I definitely think the Gigantamax is kind of separate. It's a little bit more of like the Dynamax. Like, how hard am I going to go for Lugia? I don't know. We went really hard for the Shadow, and I'd rather power up a Shadow personally. So yeah, just let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I'll talk to you guys later.
We want to give a huge thank you to our incredible Patreon supporters. Your support means everything to us and helps make content like this possible.
You're helping us take things to the next level. We couldn't do this without you.